Hey everybody, it's me, Remy, the comic book poser, and I'm here today to welcome you to Enter the Poserverse. Not done talking about my favorite books from 2020. Got 3 more publishers left to come out. But it's been a while since I've talked to you all about new books, so I'm going to tell you about the top 5 books that came out on last week's New Comic Book Day that you should pick up on this week's New Comic Book Day if you missed out. And to see what makes the list, you'll have to check it out after this.
Hey, little girl, did you want to know a secret?
I got 5 on it. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I did it. There's no honorable mention this week. I liked more than just my top 5 books, but seeing if I can stick to 5. So, coming in at number 5 is a King in Black tie-in. It's Return of the Valkyries, number 1, from Marvel Comics. It's by Jason Aaron and Torun Grönbok, and art is Nina Vakueva, and Tamara Bonvillain is on colors. I knew I would probably be partial to this book because I really liked Jason Aaron's run on Jane Foster Valkyrie, so I was ready to read this one. And this picks up, and, you know, if you're behind in King in Black, then I'll give you a second to fast forward, because this might be a little bit of a spoiler if you didn't read King in Black number 1, but Sentry dies. So the entire theme of this book is Valkyrie guiding Sentry through the final phases of his life and escorting him to death. I think the story is really interesting. You get to see kind of the fear of the symbiotes and things like that play its way throughout. I think the art is really good. There's a good play with the Valkyries all together in terms of them potentially rising as a force that could, challenge Null, since there's not been a whole heck of a lot of success yet. And I'm excited for January 27th, which is when the next copy, or the next issue of this book comes out. Coming in at number 4 is a book that I read number 1, forgot to add it to my pull list, picked up 2, 3, and 4, and just flew through it this week. From Image Comics, it's Getting It Together number 4, and it's by Cinna Grace and Omar Spahi. The art is Jenny D. Fine and Cinna Grace, and colors are by MX Struble. I talked about issue number 1 on, I can't remember if it made the definitive rankings or if it was just in the pull list video, but essentially this is a coming of age tale like, Friends was in the 90s or 2000s. But if there were people of color or there were people across the queer identity spectrum, that would be this book. It tells the story of a band on the verge of getting signed. It tells the story of a brother and a sister who are going through a tense part in their relationship. It tells the story of a brother trying to, her brother trying to find his identity of how he wants to operate as a gay man in today's society. There's all kinds of breakups. There's all kinds of drama. And it's just a really, really good story that's super relatable. The art in this book is also really, really good because at the end of issue number 3, they decide to pop, it's either ecstasy or Molly, and the book ends with this kind of art as they're all tripping, and then book number 4 picks up with the rest of this art, and I really think it's kind of cool watching them interact and be different people as they're high, and I really like how the art changes it and kind of gives you that sensation that they are someone else. But it's really fun watching, decisions be made as someone, the primary character grapples with potentially going solo and breaking away from Nip Slip. You see, people come together, you see people separate, but there's a lot of, self-discovery that happens, kind of connecting to her roots, what really made her fall in love with music as a child. The essay and the back matter of this, there's a good resolute ending to this, and if this is the last book of Getting It Together I get to read, I'll be happy, but there's room for more, and Essay in the back matter indicates that if this does really well in trade, then Image will do the right thing and hopefully get us more issues of getting it together. But it's just a really kind of cool, fresh, relatable story, and it's something that I enjoyed, right? It's a real-world coming-of-age tale that looks like today's world, instead of, you know, every depiction that we have of it on, you know, in TV and movies, which is just white people coming of age. So it's really awesome in terms of, again, me thinking about something that I can share with my students who are getting into this medium, because, again, I have a lot of queer students, a lot of students of color, and to find representations of things that they may be able to relate with, even if it's just seeing a character like them in a comic, makes me want to recommend. Coming in at number 3, from AWA, this is The Resistance Reborns, and it's a one-shot. It's by J. Michael Straczynski, C.P. Smith, and then one of my favorite names in comics, Snakebite Cortez. So, I liked The Resistance as a story, but it just kind of jumps into like, hey, here are these people who have just discovered that they have powers, but there's no depth, there's no backstory, there's no world building to it, right? And that's something that sometimes gets cut out in 5-issue story arcs. And I think this is the perfect time for a book like this to come out now, because it gives you the background into the major players of the Resistance and kind of shows you, you know, how they got their powers, what exactly they were dealing with during the big die-off as people around them, you know, were suffering. You get to see the different powers that they have, and how they start to use them before they kind of figure out how they want to operate. And I like the art in here because there's kind of a pulpy quality to the art as well. But it's interesting to see how the powers match the personality that they had before the global pandemic. The other reason why I think it's really good to put out now is the very last thing that you see at the bottom of the story is to be continued in The Resistance Volume 2, Issue 1. So if you want to talk about a good one-shot that gives you history to increase the depth of enjoyment of the original 5-issue miniseries and promote the story that is going to come out in Volume 2, Issue 1, then I think this is the perfect book to do so. So, very nicely done, AWA. Coming in at number 2 is a book that I still have forgotten to put on my pull list. I read number 2 and I immediately added it so I never forget it or never ever miss it again. From IDW, we've got Sea of Sorrows number 2 by Rich Douek, Alex Cormack, and comic book YouTube's favorite letterer, Justin Birch. I tweeted immediately after I finished reading this book, like, I don't want to sully how good this book is with my terrible, dumb words. And I got a response. I think it was from Cormac, the artist, Sully Away. So here we go. So if you haven't read book number 1, it's about people who essentially find a submarine and they think there's a bunch of gold in there and they're going to go into the water and get it out. And it doesn't go well for them. There's scary shit in the water. Because that's why it's the Sea of Sorrows, not Sea of get that coin, sis. What is interesting is looking at how, like, all of the members of the ship are dealing with, you know, different motivations. It opens up with a nightmare, a little bit of PTSD. You find out as someone early in the book goes down to try and bring something up from the sub, he dies, and they think it's a shark attacking him and the airline that follows, you know, an old diver down into the ocean. And they decide that they, you know, are gonna stick with it because the second in command, who is the only woman on the ship, essentially looks at them as like, you know what you got between your legs? You think you got some balls down there? Give them a good tug, and let's go get that money and bring the sub up. But as it comes up, or as they attempt to bring it up, we start seeing what exactly lurks below, and the reveal of the threat and the effect of that threat on the crew is just beautifully done throughout. So I think Rich has a really cool story, but Alex's art just blows me away on this because of a lot of the detail and the darkness, right? That, you know, if you're looking at some of these bigger, emptier shots of the things that are going on, you know, underwater, you have a lot of these little faint kind of details that are the outlines of shadowy figures that I imagine you would see if you were diving into the ocean, right at that point in time with the limited types of technology that you would have. I'm going to see if there's another example of that without spoiling it. Yeah, so here's the second time they attempt to dive into the sea, into the submarine in this book. And again, just looking at this, you can see all kinds of little potential shadows, little things lurking in the shadows, just like the little off-white splotchy like air bubbles are kind of a cool quality that I like every time that I see it. That again, it's a terrifying notion of what it would be like to dive for anything at this point in time, let alone whether or not there's some kind of actual threat lurking in the darkness if you were to do it. So this is an amazing book. You should definitely check this one out, especially since we're only 2 issues in. If you like horror comics, and I guess if you want like some good old-timey sea stuff, like, I don't know, imagine if like Deadliest Catch or Alaskan Gold Hunter things where they do some ocean mining. Imagine all of that stuff with a scary paranormal threat that is quite topical, that becomes quite real. So, awesome series. If you're not on board, get on board. It has officially made my pull list, and I'm still mad at myself for missing it from jump. A couple other books that came out this week that I was really into. A lot of it were, you know, I really enjoyed a lot of the King in Black tie-ins this week. And y'all know if you watched last week's pull list video that it was just a Marvel heavy week for me, right? That it was like everything King in Black and a handful of indies. So in trying to figure out what the top book was, again, this was something that I missed initially putting it on my poll when my wife went and picked up my comics for me. I forgot it was on the list, went shopping at shop number 2, found a copy of it, and when I go pick up my new books this week, I'll have 2 copies of Scout's Honor number 1. This is a book from Aftershock. It's by David Pepos, Luca Casalanguida, and then Matt Milla and Carlos M. Mangual on it. I knew I would kind of be attached to this book, you know, because it's playing with scouts, and I am a proud Eagle Scout. But essentially this is set up in a post-apocalyptic world where the, like, holy text for some folks is a, like, Boy Scouts field manual that they discovered. And there's a good job kind of setting it up in terms of looking at, you know, why the Scouts, the Ranger Scouts are something that is going to be a potential force in the book. And I just kind of like that haunting 2-page spread of the snapshot of, you know, our post-apocalyptic America, and I just kind of like the detail on that tattered and torn flag. But you are finding out, right, that it's not just like life-saving and, you know, God and country merit badges that they are into, but it is, you know, like they fight a giant, like, mystical mutated boar in the beginning, and they get merit badges for all kinds of acts of service, and it's done in the name of honoring, like, the founder of the Scouts, which is also the guy who is the background image on the cover. And I just like kind of seeing how this all plays out, and the reveal at the end is quite interesting, and I want to see how it's going to change the direction of the story and the way that we interpret the Scouts. But the other thing that I like is the back matter. So you can see in the Journal of Scoutmaster Thomas Shepard some of the different merit badges that can be awarded, like Explosives, the History of the Badlands, Wildlife Mastery, Switchblade, and valor, and the goal is becoming part of the Eagle Guard. I heard that some shops had actual merit badges that they had to give away with issue number 1, and the shop that I bought this at didn't have them, and I don't think my LCS would have had it either. So if you have any of these dope merit badges, and you want to hook your former, or I guess not former, but Eagle Scout for life up with some Ranger Scout merit badges, so I can attempt to ascend to the top of the ranks, that would be awesome. But really, really creepy post-apocalyptic book that takes a wild twist at the end, and I want to see how, when that knowledge is shared with folks, how it changes, maybe the perception that some folks have about the world they live in or the scouts that are there. So what do you think? Any books that you read this week that didn't make my list that you're interested in? I know there were a couple of people who were hot on some of the future state titles that came out. I didn't pull any. Didn't pick any up. So we'll see if y'all sufficiently hype it up for me to be interested in. But let me know what you think about my picks. Let me know what your picks of the week were down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and have a good one.
Hey, little girl, did you want to know a secret?
I got 5 on it. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.